Edward Wilmot Blitton quotes: "Let us teach our children from their infancy, for they need to be taught that no curse except that which every day follows the impenitent, hangs upon us, that it is the force of circumstances, induced, as we have endeavored to show, by our iniquities, that keep us down, and that we have as much right as any other people to strive to rise to the very zenith of national glory. The African spirit is a spirit of service. I do not mean in a degrading sense, but in the highest sense, in which the Son of Man came not to be ministered unto but to minister, the sense he took upon himself the form of a servant slave in the original. The spirit of service in the black man is born of his spiritual genius. Africa may yet prove to be the spiritual conservatory of the world, when the civilized nations, in consequence of their wonderful material development, shall have had their spiritual susceptibilities blunted through the agency of a captivating and absorbing materialism. It may be that they have to resort to Africa to recover some of the simple elements of faith." Edward Wilmot Blitton, August 3, 1832 – February 7, 1912, was a Liberian educator, writer, diplomat, and politician who was primarily active in West Africa. Born in the Danish West Indies, he joined the waves of black immigrants from the Americas who migrated to the country. Blitton became a teacher for 5 years in the British West African colony of Sierra Leone in the early 20th century. His writings on Pan-Africanism became influential throughout West Africa, attracting attention in countries such as the United States as well. He believed that Zionism was a model for what he termed Ethiopianism, and that African Americans could return to Africa and help in the rebuilding of the continent. 1. Blitton was recognized in his youth for his talents and drive. He was educated and mentored by John Knox, an American Protestant minister in St. Thomas, who encouraged him to continue his education in the United States. In 1850, Blitton was refused admission to 3 northern theological seminaries because of his race. Knox encouraged him to go to Liberia, a colony set up for free people of color by the American Colonization Society. Blitton emigrated in 1850 and made his career and life there. He married into a prominent family and soon started working as a journalist. Blitton's ideas remain influential to this day. Early life and education. Edward Wilmot Blitton. Edward Wilmot Blitton, c. 1887. Blitton was born on August 3, 1832 in St. Thomas, Danish West Indies, now known as the American Virgin Islands, to free black parents who claimed descent from the Igbo people of present-day Nigeria. Between 1842 and 1845 the family lived in Portobello, Venezuela, where Blitton discovered a facility for languages, becoming fluent in Spanish. 5. According to the historian Hollis R. Lynch, in 1845 Blitton met the Reverend John P. Knox, a white American, who became pastor of the St. Thomas Protestant Dutch Reformed Church. 5. Blitton and his family lived near the church, and Knox was impressed with the studious, intelligent boy. Knox became his mentor, encouraging Blitton's considerable aptitude for oratory and literature. Mainly because of his close association with Knox, the young Blitton decided to become a minister, which his parents encouraged. 5. In May 1850, Blitton, accompanied by Reverend Knox's wife, went to the United States to enroll in Rutgers Theological College, Knox's alma mater. He was refused admission due to his race. Efforts to enroll him in 2 other theological colleges also failed. Knox encouraged Blitton to go to Liberia, the colony set up in the 1830s by the American Colonization Society, ACS, in West Africa, where he thought Blitton would be able to use his talents. 6. Later in 1850, Blitton sailed to Liberia. He soon became deeply involved in its development. Starting in 1860, Blitton corresponded with William Ewart Gladstone, who would later become a significant liberal leader and Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. Gladstone offered Blitton an opportunity to study in England in 1861, but Blitton declined due to his obligations in Liberia. 7. Marriage, family, and legacy. Blitton married Sarah Yates, an Americo-Liberian from the prominent Yates family. She was the daughter of Hilary Yates and his wife. Her paternal uncle, Beverly Page Yates, served as Vice President of Liberia from 1856 to 1860 under President Stephen Allen Benson. Blitton and Sarah had 3 children together. Later, while living for several years in Freetown, Sierra Leone, Blitton had a long-term relationship with Anna Erskine, an African-American woman from Louisiana. She was a granddaughter of James Spriggs Payne, who was twice elected as the President of Liberia. Blitton and Erskine had 5 children together. In the 21st century, those Blitton direct descendants living in Sierra Leone are from this union. They have been considered part of the Creole population. Among his descendants living in Freetown is Sylvia Blitton, publisher of the Awareness Times. Blitton died on February 7, 1912 in Freetown, Sierra Leone, where he was buried at Racecourse Cemetery. In honor of him, the 20th-century Pan-Africanist George Padmar named his daughter Blitton 8. Career. Emigrating to Liberia in 1850, Blitton soon was working in journalism. From 1855 to 1856, he edited the Liberia Herald and wrote the column A Voice from Bleeding Africa. He also spent time in British colonies in West Africa, particularly Nigeria and Sierra Leone, writing for early newspapers in both colonies. He was also serving as editor at the Negro and the African World. He maintained ties with the American Colonization Society and published in their African Repository and Colonial Journal. In 1861, Blitton became professor of Greek and Latin at Liberia College. He was selected as president of the college, serving 1880-1884 during a period of expansion. As a diplomat, Blitton served as an ambassador for Liberia to Britain and France. He also traveled to the United States, where he spoke to major black churches about his work in Africa. Blitton believed that black Americans could end their suffering of racial discrimination by returning to Africa and helping to develop it. He was criticized by African Americans who wanted to gain full civil rights in their birth nation of the United States and did not identify with Africa. 9. In suggesting a redemptive role for African Americans in Africa through what he called Ethiopianism, Blitton likened their suffering in the diaspora to that of the Jews. He supported the 19th-century Zionist project of Jews returning to Palestine. 10. In their book, Israel in the Black American Perspective, Robert G. Weisbord and Richard Kazarian write that in his booklet, The Jewish Question, published in 1898, the year after the First Zionist Congress, Blitton describes that while traveling in the Middle East in 1866 he wanted to travel to the original home of the Jews to see Jerusalem and Mt. Zion, the joy of the whole earth. While in Jerusalem he visited the Western Wall. Blitton advocated for the Jewish settlement of Palestine and chided Jews for not taking advantage of the opportunity to live in their ancient homeland. Blitton was familiar with Theodor Herzl and his book The Jewish State, praising it for expressing ideas which have given such an impetus to the real work of the Jews as will tell with enormous effect upon their future history. 11. Later in life, Blitton became involved in Islam, and concluded that it was a more African religion than Christianity for African Americans and Americo-Liberians. Participating in the development of the country, Blitton was appointed the Liberian Secretary of State, 1862-64. He was later appointed as Secretary of the Interior, 1880-82. Citation needed. Blitton contested the 1885 presidential election for the Republican Party, but lost to incumbent Hillary R. W. Johnson. From 1901 to 1906, Blitton directed the education of Sierra Leonean Muslims at an institution in Sierra Leone, where he lived in Freetown. This is when he had his relationship with Anna Erskine. They had 5 children together. 12. He became passionate about Islam during this period, recommending it to African Americans as the major religion most in keeping with their historic roots in Africa. 10. Writings. As a writer, Blitton has been regarded by some as the father of Pan-Africanism and is noted as one of the first people to articulate a notion of African personality and the uniqueness of the African race. His ideas have influenced many 20th century figures including Marcus Garvey, George Padmar, and Kwame Nkrumah. His major work, Christianity, Islam and the Negro Race, 1887, promoted the idea that practicing Islam was more unifying and fulfilling for Africans than Christianity. Blitton believed that practicing Christianity had a demoralizing effect on Africans, although he continued to be a Christian. He thought Islam was more authentically African, as it had been brought to sub-Saharan areas by people from North Africa. His book quickly became controversial. At first many people did not believe that an African had written it. His promotion of Islam was disputed. In later printings, Blitton included his photograph as the frontispiece 13. His book included the following: Let us do away with the sentiment of race. Let us do away without African personality and be lost, if possible, in another race. This is as wise or as philosophical as to say, let us do away with gravitation, with heat and cold and sunshine and rain. Of course, the race in which these persons would be absorbed is the dominant race, before which, in cringing self-surrender and ignoble self-suppression they lie in prostrate admiration. Due to his belief in Ethiopianism, in the late 19th century Blitton publicly supported the creation of a Jewish state in Israel, praising Theodor Herzl as the creator of that marvelous movement called Zionism. 14. Works books. Call of Providence to the Descendants of Africa in America, a discourse delivered to colored congregations in the cities of New York, Philadelphia, Baltimore, Harrisburg, during the summer of 1862, in Liberia's offering, being addresses, sermons, etc., New York, John A. Gray, 1862. Christianity, Islam, and the Negro Race, London, W. B. Whittingham & Co., 1887, 2nd edition 1888, University of Edinburgh Press, 3rd edition, 1967, reprint of 1888 edition, Baltimore, Maryland, Black Classic Press, 1994, edition on Google eBooks. African Life and Customs, London, C. M. Phillips, 1908, reprint Baltimore, Maryland, Black Classic Press, 1994. West Africa Before Europe, and Other Addresses, delivered in England in 1901 and 1903, London, C. M. Phillips, 1905. Thank you and be well.